Welcome to another week of the Jeff Tate Sports Podcast. Episode 72 here, and I really hope last week you guys enjoyed the ACC and Big 12 conference previews. We're not done. Cole and I have spent a lot of time recording, studying, and just getting all in all a lot of facts for you guys to hopefully get you prepared for the upcoming college football season that we're hoping we can have. This week, no different. We're going to have two podcasts, Tuesday and Thursday, today being obviously Tuesday, July 14th. And today you get the Big Ten Conference preview, and this one went over 30 minutes. Cole and I had a lot of input to give on this conference, given that we both have teams we root for in this given conference. So today you will get the Big Ten. Later in the week, you will get the Pac-12 football preview, and then next week, we are looking at doing the SEC and then our coaching podcast where we talk about if our programs that we like, so him, Michigan, I'm going to either pick Michigan State or Ohio State. If we could have one coach to come in and take over the reins, who would it be and why? And we're going to kind of rank some of those coaches. So please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Please share these podcasts. A lot of time has been put into this podcast series we are doing, and we want you guys to hopefully enjoy it. So without further ado, the Big Ten College Football Conference Preview. We are recording this on Thursday, July 9th, and actually it was a good day to record this because a lot of news came out for college football. Most notably the Big Ten, and that is the podcast you're getting today, the Big Ten Conference Preview. As of now, the Big Ten has eliminated their non-conference schedule. My rankings and overall records were based off of them playing a full schedule, so I will just give you the conference records. Cole just did the conference record, so it should work. So, Cole, when I look at the Big Ten as a whole this year, a lot of talent. I would say another strong year for the Big Ten. Multiple teams that should be at the top of the national polls. I think it's the Big Ten and the SEC are the two elite conferences. I know a lot of people will give the SEC the nod, but do you think the Big Ten's strong this year?
Yeah, I think the Big Ten has a lot of talent this year for sure. A lot of big name players that should go pretty high in the draft or have some big years. And this Player of the Year race in the Big Ten will probably be pretty packed.
Yep. And speaking of Player of the Year, that's my next point I want to get to. I feel like it's Justin Fields, the quarterback from Ohio State's his award to win. Or award to lose, I guess. I got that wrong last podcast. Justin Fields, over 50 touchdowns last year. I just see him being the guy. But another guy I really like, Rondale Moore. As a freshman, showed out. He doesn't play defense like Jabril Peppers did, but very versatile. They use him any way possible, and I think they're really going to get a benefit out of him. Do you see any other guys right there at the top of the Big Ten Player of the Year race coming into 2020?
Yeah, but like you said, I love Justin Fields. I think he is the best player in the Big Ten. I think he is elite, and I hate to say that because I'm a Michigan fan, but I think he should for sure win it. I do like Rondale Moore, but I don't like who's going to be giving him the ball at quarterback, so I don't think he'll win it because of that. You can't forget about Tanner Morgan or Adrian Martinez. They could make a little run at it, so keep an eye out for those guys.
Yeah, Adrian Martinez is an interesting name. He was coming out when Scott Frost went to Nebraska. He was picked to be a Heisman candidate and kind of fell flat on his face. But give Scott Frost another year and we will see. So we're going to start with our team-by-team analysis, just how we've done in the last two podcasts that hopefully you guys have listened to, the ACC and the Big 12. So first up is Indiana. And Indiana last year, they played Michigan State. I was at the game. And what I noticed a lot about them in that game is they have a good quarterback. His name is Michael Penix Jr., and they air it out. He I think, against Michigan State at about 400 yards. They couldn't stop him, and he's back. They have their really good running back that's a junior now, Stevie Scott III, who also forms a good backfield with Michael Penix Jr. I just see Indiana being a pretty decent team. 8 starters return on offense, 9 on defense. I like a lot of the playmakers here. he's got the weird last name. Whoop Philor is a receiver that caught over 1,000 yards last year. I like to see what he does next year. I mean, they just have to stop teams for them to be middle of the road in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I love Indiana this year. I like their coach. They got a good quarterback, like you said, and you just kept going on and on about all these different weapons they have. And when you combine a good quarterback, a good coach, and a bunch of weapons, a lot of dangerous things can happen, and I think they will carry their defense on their back and lead them to a great season, especially for Indiana.
Yep. So next we got Maryland, and Maryland also kind of have some new identity, I would say. Mike Locksley came from Alabama. We obviously know he has actually been pretty controversial in some of his stuff. A lot of the Big Ten coaches don't like him. When I look at them, it would be great this year if they could have his name's okay. I'm just gonna say if they could have Tua's brother, Talia Tagovailoa. He is gonna have to probably sit out this year. Very talented quarterback, but they have Josh Jackson, who is kind of disappointing in terms of his stats last year. He was very good at Virginia Tech. Came over to Maryland, not a really great year, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, was kind of banged up. When I look at this team, they play a lot like Alabama, but they're not as talented as Alabama. Next year, I think, is the year where you're really going to see what Maryland is all about. They watch out for 5-star Raheem Jarrett. He picked them over LSU and Ohio State. So for Mike Locksley to get a 5-star like that, I think that's a good thing. But I think they're a year to 2 years away.
Yeah, if there's ever been a good year for a team to have a pandemic go on, it's definitely going to be a good one for Maryland because they just need a building year. They need a year where they can just get more players in the program, get that culture going for them. It's a culture building year. It's a program building year, and I don't see a lot of wins out of them this year. I just think they just need a year or two, but they could. A lot of talent, could be very good in the next year or two.
So the next 3 teams we should have a lot of fun with. I know I get my crap for liking 2 Big Ten teams, but your favorite team is up right now, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. And the big question for Michigan fans is, can Harbaugh win a Big Ten title? I don't think it's his year, and that's just, I think other teams are a lot better, most notably Ohio State. I think it's going to be tough because they're replacing pretty much their entire offensive line except for right tackle Jalen Mayfield. Obviously, Shea Patterson's gone. I think Michigan fans look at that as excitement. You have 2 guys that are extremely talented and even a third in the ranks that I know Michigan fans are excited for. You got Joe Milton, Dylan McCaffrey. I really do like, one of the strengths of Michigan I like the versatility of Giles Jackson. I think that's a guy you can use wherever you want, and you've seen his electric speed on kickoff returns. I don't know. I think Michigan's going to be up there in the Big Ten East, but I don't see them winning the conference. Cole?
Well, I love the Wolverines this year, but you all know it. Like Michigan and preseason hopes, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. We always have them. We're always excited, and we always get let down. So we'll see how this year goes, but I love Michigan's offense this year. Another year under Josh Gaddis. They actually had a fantastic offense last year, if you look at some of the PFF stats. And I really like them. Now, the biggest issue is finding a quarterback, but I don't think that's an issue at all. I think whoever comes out on top will be the best quarterback that Jim Harbaugh has had. I personally would bet my money on Dylan McCaffrey getting it. He's been in the program longer. He's faster than Joe Milton and just knows the offense well, and I just think he could. Whoever comes out at quarterback for Michigan this year could also, I think, press for a player of the year. You just have so many weapons to throw to, and I think are going to be a really fast-paced offense for Michigan. I love Jim Harbaugh. I think he's a great coach. He hasn't won the big one. He hasn't. But that's okay right now, sort of. It's okay. I'm okay with it. But he has brought this team back from the depths. I mean, people forget how bad they were before him. He has dominated pretty much every other coach in the Big Ten besides Ryan Day and Urban Meyer at Ohio State, and I would not have it any other way as him as my head coach. And I love Josh Gaddis. A second year under at Michigan with him, and I think their offense will just be elite, and I love their talent at running back and with Giles Jackson.
Yep, you're a very optimistic Michigan fan, I'll say. But I do agree that There are times where I'm like, I think they should move on, but like you said, who would upgrade at head coach that's out there right now? Like, you're not going to get a Dabo Sweeney to leave Clemson, so I hear you there. So now
They're actually nearing a deal for extension for Harbaugh. So
yeah, I did read that.
They're not losing him anytime soon.
They got him. So Michigan State, and this I'm going to tell you right now, it's a down year for the Spartans. A down year last year as well. Mark D'Antonio's gone. He probably was one of the better coaches in the Big Ten in the 2010s. A lot of controversy towards the end, but new head coach Mel Tucker is here, and the big thing that I look at with Michigan State is quarterback. Brian Lewerke's gone. I know people didn't like Brian Lewerke, but I'm telling you, Brian Lewerke is better than the 3 quarterbacks that are on the roster right now. You got 3 guys: Theo Day, Rocky Lombardi, and a guy, Peyton Thorne, that many think will be the starter. When you look at Rocky Lombardi, I'm like, if he was good enough to beat out Lewerke, with how bad Lewerke was playing, he would have been the starter. But coaches didn't think that was the move, and his few snaps, he wasn't great. Like, he threw 21 passes, and 7 of them were completions, and 2 of them were interceptions. So I don't really like that. Very inexperienced defense, losing a lot of guys. It's gonna be a rough year. I got two bright players on the offense that I do like. Elijah Collins, freshman running back who rushed for almost 1,000 yards last year. Look for him to be a steady back in that backfield. And then Western Michigan transfer Jaden Reed, who was the MAC Freshman Player of the Year, over 1,000 receiving yards. Extremely talented guy. I just think it's a down year, and Mel Tucker, I think, will bring a different edge to the recruiting trail than Mark D'Antonio, who, I'm going to be quite honest, was a horrible recruiter and really didn't try and go get those guys. Mel Tucker already is in Florida, Texas, Georgia, the very talent-rich hotbeds. And I just look at Michigan State. Maybe they can get to a bowl game this year. Even if we have bowl games, we don't know. But I think give them a year or two, and they'll get back to the top of the Big Ten.
Yeah, Michigan State is not going to be good this year, and it's not Mel Tucker's fault. Mel Tucker joined the Spartans late, and he just is late on the recruiting. Like, there's nothing he could do about that. He's going to have a tough start at Michigan State. Like you said, they have no quarterback. I do not like pretty much any position on that team right now. I don't think they're going to be very good. I think it's just going to be a down year, and it's not Mel Tucker's fault. I like the hire of Mel Tucker. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll do a good job and get them to a few bowl games maybe. We'll see about that. But I think Mel Tucker will do just fine at Michigan State, and he'll get some pretty big recruits, and I think they will be a challenger in years to come, but this isn't their year.
So a team that is the complete opposite of this and should be the favorite and might be a national champion favorite, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and Justin Fields is back. I honestly am very happy he's an Ohio State Buckeye because I think Kirby Smart messed that whole situation up. He could have had a Justin Fields type player if he kept him, but decided Jake Fromm was the guy, and so Ohio State fans are very happy Justin Fields is back. You look at him last year, he had 51 touchdowns, and that's remarkable for a guy that transferred in February and only had 3 to 4 months with the playbook and got thrown out there and played. Extremely talented. Ohio State, you're going to have a lot of talent around you. You look at their recruiting class, they get a lot of elite guys. It helps Justin Fields that the guys throwing to him are extremely good. You have Chris Olave, who looks to be one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. Up-and-coming Garrett Wilson, and then 4 top 100 receivers in the recruiting class last year. Julian Fleming, a top 5 player in the country. Lots of talent. Running back Trey Sermon, transfer from Oklahoma. Kind of had injury issues, but when he was the guy at Oklahoma, he was elite. They also have Master Teague back there. A lot of good guys. Offensive line, Wyatt Davis is probably going to be a top pick in the draft next year at offensive lineman. A lot of on defense, I would say, is their big question. You got to replace 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft in Chase Young and Jeff Okudah. They recruit good, but really only have 4 to 5 starters returning. So I wonder how the defense looks, but I think it's Ohio State's conference, and that's just the too much talent on the field. Let's just say that.
They're just so dang good, and I'm sick of it. They're always good. They always have so much talent. They're so talented every year. I'm so by the end of the year, I'm always so hyped for the game, thinking maybe Michigan has a chance this year. And every single year, I get let down. This team is always so good. Justin Fields, elite. He's going to make millions of dollars in the NFL. They have talent everywhere around him. He's surrounded with talent. Their whole team is good. My only hopes I have for this season for them to go down is, one, not quite as experienced as they usually are. So they have a few young guys going to be out there, a younger team than Ohio State usually is. And two, sometimes you see when a coach takes over for a historically good coach at a very good program, he has a great first year, and his second year there's a drop-off. You see that sometimes. So we'll see if that happens to Ryan Day this year. I'm not hopeful that that'll happen, but I think that I think that might happen. It could happen, and I'm really just hoping for any little thing to go wrong so Michigan can finally have their day.
All right, so Penn State's our next team, and you look at the Big Ten East, and obviously if you guys have gotten the trend, we started in the Big Ten East. This is an elite conference. You look at Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and in the last 10 years, Michigan State's been there. Lots of talent. So Penn State returns quarterback Sean Clifford, who last year threw for over 2,600 yards, had to replace Trace McSorley, which is not an easy job. An elite defense, I would say, probably the best in the conference. Micah Parsons, outside linebacker, looks to be a first-round draft pick after this year. Journey Brown is another running back that Penn State is comparing to the likes of Miles Sanders, Saquon Barkley, and you got to take them at their word because they've developed those guys who weren't huge prospects. So I like Penn State. I have them finishing just below Ohio State in the Big Ten East.
Penn State, their defense is crazy. They're fast. They're just elite. I think they clearly have the best defense in the Big Ten, and I don't think it's that close. I think they have the most talent on defense, and they have the most NFL prospects on defense, in my opinion. And then Clifford needs to take a big jump this year to push this team to where they can go, which is Indianapolis or even a national championship, because they're right there every year with 11 wins, 3 years. So I think in order for that to happen, Clifford needs to take a big jump, but I just don't see Clifford being their guy this year. But I think Penn State will make it back to Indianapolis within the next few years and maybe to a national championship.
So the last team in the Big East is Rutgers, and I'm going to read you this quote that I wrote. This team is the joke of the Big Ten. But give Greg Schiano 1 to 2 years, and they won't be the bottom feeder of the conference. Rutgers is in a unique place being on the East Coast. You have a lot of talent on the East Coast, and besides Maryland, it's the only Big Ten school there. And Rutgers is a bigger brand. They're one of the first college football programs ever. I just think Greg Schiano was a great hire. He's been a lot of places, the NFL. Obviously, he was at Ohio State. Before this, he was going to go coach Tennessee, and I think Tennessee's a little bit better than Rutgers. So if you look at that, people trusted him to go to Tennessee. Obviously, there was the fan pushback, but I think he's a talented coach. Not much talent here at Rutgers, in my opinion. Best player is Isaiah Pacheco at running back. He should eclipse 1,000 yards this year. With Rutgers, I'm going to say give him a few years. They do return a lot of starters, but those starters weren't great, so that's why I'm not going to give them I have them as the worst team in the Big Ten, and Cole, I know you don't, so let's hear the case for Rutgers.
See, when I look at Rutgers, the past however many years they've been in the Big Ten, I've been missing one thing from them. Well, a lot. Well, talent's one of them, obviously, but also there's been no fire under them. They've had they don't look like they're happy to be on that field. They don't look fired up for anything, and I think that's a huge part of football, and that's going to be a big part. That's a big part of the game. And I think Greg Schiano is going to light a fire under them. And I think that they won't have a lot of wins this year, but they will. I don't think they'll finish last, and I think they'll have 2 wins. Because I think there's a lot of talent there that is untapped that no one's seen because they just haven't even cared or had enough fire under them that I think Greg Schiano will bring out. And I just think that will spark some recruiting for Rutgers, and within the next few years, they could be middle of the pack, which would be great for Rutgers and maybe even near the top. But we'll see what happens. But I think this year could be a good year for Rutgers standards, but a bad year compared to the Big Ten.
So now we jump to the Big Ten West, and our first team in the Big Ten West is Illinois. And we're heading into the 5th year of Lovie Smith. When Lovie Smith was hired at Illinois, it shocked literally everybody. This guy coached the Chicago Bears, and then he got hired by Illinois, which isn't historically a good football program, but they have some talent here. Brandon Peters, which Cole will speak on in a little bit, is a former Michigan player, pretty talented quarterback. Last year got the starting gig and threw for just under 2,000 yards. This team made a bowl game. They return a lot of those offensive starters that helped them get to a bowl game. When I look at them, though, I just don't know. The defense is a huge issue for this team. Last year they ranked 11th in the Big Ten in overall defense. I don't know. I see them taking a step back from last year. Last year they went 6-7. Like I said, got to a bowl game, played Cal, got beat, but that was a stepping stone in the right direction for Illinois. But I see a step back. And Cole, I know you don't see a step back. So make the case for Illinois.
Well, yeah, I love Illinois this year. See that defense that was so bad last year? They threw a bunch of freshmen into the fire last year, and they were a young defense. And I think they already challenged a lot of the tough teams, upset Wisconsin, and they played a great season last year. So I don't see them going down. They have, like you said, Brandon Peters returning. And Brandon Peters would have been starting at Michigan if they didn't get Shea Patterson. And I wish they did not get Shea Patterson because I would have rather had Peters. I like Peters a lot. You had a lot of experience coming back with him and a roster that's just been elevated through the transfer market and just a lot of returners on defense who will be in their second year who will have put on a lot of weight, a lot of muscle, and a lot of knowledge after that first learning curve of a season. And I don't see Illinois going backwards at all. I think that I only see it going up from there, and I love Lovie Smith, and I just think with a good coach, you're going to win. With a good quarterback, you're going to win, and I think with a good defense, you'll win, and I think they'll have all three of those this year, and this team will make a massive, massive leap, especially for Illinois standards.
All right, well, you made the case for them there. It'll be funny to see when we get to the record later in the podcast. So, next up is, in my opinion, the most consistent but boring team in the Big Ten. That's Iowa. They're always this way, good defense, average quarterback, and they do have to replace one of their better quarterbacks in their history in Nate Stanley. We think it's going to be sophomore Tyler Goodson, but we really don't know. They have some good playmakers. Amir Smith-Marset is one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. Really good return man. And defensive coordinator Phil Parker will have this defense ready. I don't see them. I see them being towards the top of the Big Ten West, which in my opinion isn't that impressive.
Yeah, I think Iowa won't be their classic Iowa selves this year. I think they will still have a good defense. I think they will have they do have a good receiving corps, but they don't have a good quarterback. So that receiving corps doesn't really mean anything to me without a good quarterback. He could turn out to be pretty good, but I just don't trust him at all. And I also like their run game, but they have a really tough schedule this year. And I think this will be a year to forget for Iowa, and they'll just be right back to their usual Iowa standards next year.
So next we have the hottest team, I would say, in the Big Ten from a recruiting and from a fan perspective. Minnesota. P.J. Fleck was at Western Michigan, made them a powerhouse in the MAC. You had the Cotton Bowl appearance. He got Western Michigan too, and a lot of hype surrounds P.J. Fleck. He has the row the boat mentality, just a lot of crazy sayings and stuff like that, but a lot of hype comes with him. I think he got a little lucky last year, but he still has a good team this year. You had two first and second round picks in Antonio Winfield and Tyler Johnson, who are now pros. A lot of talent's gone in Minnesota, but you still have quarterback Tanner Morgan, who threw for over 3,000 yards. I look at them. I still think they'll be one of the better teams in the Big Ten West. I don't see them going 11-2 again. I think that had to do a lot with the guys that were on their way out. But PJ Fleck looks to have Minnesota as a contender in the Big Ten going forward.
Yeah, like you said, Minnesota lost a lot of very, very important players, and I think last year for them was just an anomaly. I love their quarterback. I think he'll do great. Like I said, I don't think he'll be challenging for Player of the Year in the Big Ten. But I don't like PJ Fleck as much as most people do. I think he's a little overrated. And I just don't see Minnesota repeating what happened last year, and I don't even think they'll come close to what they did last year. This team is just going to definitely, I see, having a drop-off from last year. But their schedule isn't the hardest, but that's usually what you get from the West.
Very true. Nebraska next up. And Scott Frost enters his third year with the program, 9-15 record, which for Nebraska standards is terrible. Adrian Martinez is an extremely talented quarterback that things just haven't clicked around him. Last year, 17 touchdowns total, just over 2,500 yards of total offense. I look at him, I look at this team, and middle of the pack in the Big Ten. It's an extremely talented conference, and I think Scott Frost needs to continue recruiting pretty well, and Adrian Martinez just needs to take a huge step because he's an extremely talented quarterback.
Yeah, I think Nebraska is just going to finish middle of the pack. I think they're going to make some important steps forward. Scott Frost will take some important steps forward with the team and the culture and just building them up. However, this team could surprise people because, like I said, I love quarterbacks and I love good coaches. I think if you have both those players, you can beat anyone. So I think Nebraska could potentially be a good team, but I think they're just going to finish middle of the pack, and we'll see what Adrian Martinez does this year. And, I don't think Scott Frost is by any means on the hot seat, but if he has one or two more seasons like last year, he'll definitely be feeling pretty warm there.
Lots of returning starters are for this next team. That's Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald is probably one of the most underrated coaches in the country, for sure the Big Ten. And he's entering his 15th year where he's 99-79. So pretty consistent at Northwestern. Funny stat for this Northwestern team from last year, they were the worst offense I have seen in a long time. 13th in the Big Ten. Interesting stat here, 6 passing touchdowns from this team and 15 interceptions. That's horrendous. Good thing for them, all those quarterbacks don't look to be playing next year. Peyton Ramsey's a transfer from Indiana, so he looks to give them a better quarterback. They're definitely one of the better defenses in the Big Ten, probably one or two in the Big Ten West. I give them the nod over teams like Iowa. Penn State I still have as the best defense in this conference. Northwestern last year was 3-9. Big step forward I have for them. I have them middle of the Big Ten and getting to a bowl game this year.
Yeah, I like Pat Fitzgerald a lot. His defenses are usually pretty good, and last year he had a great defense. The offense, like you said, let him down last year a lot, but they have a new offensive coordinator, and they have Peyton Ramsey. So if that defense can have little to no drop-off from last year, I don't see the offense being any worse. I think they will increase their win total by about 1 to 2 to 3 wins, and they'll just be better and challenge a lot of teams.
Purdue is next up on our list, and when I look at Purdue, if it wasn't for Ohio State and Michigan, I would say this team has the most talented receiving room. You have Rondale Moore, who as a freshman broke onto the scene, and another freshman last year that broke onto the scene, David Bell. Well, both these guys are back to help sophomore quarterback Jack Plummer, who threw for over 1,600 yards last year. Has some talent. We saw a lot of promise out of him. Now he has to put it together. You have the skill set of Rondale Moore. Tons of talent around him. I don't know, though. It's a hard Big Ten. They don't have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. Tough non-conference, honestly. You got to play Memphis, at Boston. Oh, well, sorry, those games aren't happening. But very tough non-conference if they had to have played that. I'd see Purdue mediocre, maybe gets to a bowl, but probably just under there at like a 4-8, 5-7.
Yeah, I don't like Purdue very much this year at all. I think it's going to be a lot like last year. The quarterback, there's just nothing special about him, and you need to have a good offensive line if you have a quarterback like that. And they don't. They have a lot to address there. And their defense will be okay. They have a good, really, really good defensive end. And then obviously you have Rondale Moore and David Bell and rounding out their receivers. And Like, those guys are elite. But I just don't think they have the quarterback and the offensive line to allow them time and the holes to get a lot of yards and a lot of production out of them. So I don't see anything special from Purdue. Just like last year, maybe a little worse.
Wisconsin is the final team in the Big Ten and the last team in the Big Ten West, and in my opinion is the favorite of the Big Ten West. This team returns a lot of starters, 9 returning defensive starters for a team that was already ranked second in the Big Ten, 4th in the country in total yards per game given up. You got a lot of talent like middle linebacker Jack Sanborn, defensive end Isaiah Loudermilk. Jack Cohn is back at quarterback to start again. The huge question is Jonathan Taylor's gone. When you lose a guy that rushed for over 2,000 yards and really was the identity of the Wisconsin offense the last 3 years. Not to mention Quintez Cephas, who caught for just under 1,000 yards last year. They have to replace a lot of talent on offense, but I think that defense is extremely elite, and that's why I see them winning the Big Ten West.
Yeah, I don't really see them winning the Big Ten West, but obviously this Wisconsin team can always be pretty good. But when you lose Jonathan Taylor, I think he was the backbone of this team. Losing him is going to cause a lot of issues, I think, and I think there will be a drop-off this year. Their defense will still be good, obviously. They always are. I like Jack Cohn, but I think he reminds me a little of Wilton Spate from Michigan a few years ago. Was pretty efficient and just didn't make a lot of mistakes, but doesn't do anything special. We'll see what happens at running back. We'll see what happens with their receivers. I don't love their offense, and I don't think they'll win. I don't think they'll win the West for once this year. But like, they're always good. They're always a tough team to play. But I do see a little bit drop off. I think they'll have like 2 or 3 less wins this year.
So let's really quickly wrap up this podcast with our standings, and I know have very different standings based off of us talking before we went on the air. And give me let's do this, your bottom 3 teams in the Big Ten.
All right, my bottom 3, I'm going to start with number 12, Rutgers, 2-7. Good year for Rutgers, bad year compared to the Big Ten. It's going to be a good building year for them. Next one, Maryland. Like I said, don't like them at all. I think they'll be 1-8. It's a building year for them. Next year could be a huge year for them, but this year's not it. And then my last team is Michigan State. They just don't have – they're going to be 0-8. They don't have a lot of talent anywhere on that team. The quarterback's terrible. Mel Tucker had to come in late, and I think that it's going to be a terrible year this year for him, but we'll see what happens in the future. But I just think Mel Tucker was given a tough hand with this one.
Yeah, so a lot of differences here. I do have one of your teams. My worst team I have in the Big Ten this year is Rutgers, and Illinois are tied for 1-8 in my opinion. I'm interested to get to in a minute your Illinois conference record. And then I have Purdue at number 12 coming in at 2-7. They're also tied with Maryland. That's 2-7. So what do you have Illinois going this year in the Big Ten?
I have Illinois finishing 5th in the Big Ten and 7-2. I really like Illinois, like I said, and I looked at their schedule and I like it, and I see a lot of wins there. If they can just get past that first game, I think it's against Wisconsin. Unless I'm mistaken.
That's right.
They win that game. They do not have a lot of tough games until Penn State, and I think Penn State will be their first loss of the year. 7-2, going to be a great year for Illinois. Lovie Smith's going to go crazy.
Okay, so we'll wrap this up with our top 3. I'll go first. Ohio State 9-0. I have them going undefeated. They do have to go at Penn State, but with the coronavirus and all that good stuff, I don't see a whiteout happening at Penn State, and that takes a lot away from Penn State's home field advantage. Number 2 in the Big Ten, I have Wisconsin at 8-1. And then 3rd in the Big Ten, I have Penn State at 7-2. I also really quickly want to say I have Michigan at 5th in the Big Ten at 6-3.
5th?
Yep, 5th in the Big Ten.
Okay.
Yep.
Number 1, Ohio State, 9-0. I'm not going to bet against them until they give me a reason to. They always win, and it's annoying. Number 2, Michigan, 8-1. They're going to win every game but the big one. They're just most talented besides Ohio State and always win. Number 3, Penn State, 7-2. Like I said, elite defense, but don't have the quarterback to give them the leap, and that home field advantage is not going to do anything for them this year.
So let me get your really quickly. What's Wisconsin's record? Because I have them at number 2, winning the Big Ten West. You obviously do not have them winning the Big Ten West. Who do you have winning the Big Ten West, and where do you have Wisconsin?
So I have Illinois winning the Big Ten West, and I have Wisconsin at 5-4 at going to be number 6.
All right, you laugh at me saying Michigan at 5. I think Illinois winning the Big Ten West would be a crazy miracle for Illinois fans. But with all we've seen this year in sports, it wouldn't surprise me if it happens. So this will wrap up the Big Ten Preview Podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoy.